On a mist-covered hilltop in Lebanon lies a mysterious and holy place. A monastery where a simple monk once lived, who would go on to have a profound effect on an entire country. Welcome to Lebanon. I'm standing here high above ground, overlooking the capital Beirut, right at the statue of Our Lady of Lebanon. And when Pope Leo recently visited this country, he spoke about the richness of the faith here and also the resilience of the people. But in a country where they have suffered so much and the situation still unstable, what does the future hold for Lebanon? I've traveled to Lebanon at the same time as Pope Leo's historic visit to produce this documentary about the life of Christians in Lebanon today. I meet those who, because of war, had to flee.
We are a minority. We have no saying if we want a war or not. We just want to live.
I hear from those who firmly believe Muslims and Christians can coexist peacefully.
Islam is a religion of mercy, and Christianity is a religion of love.
And talk to those who believe it sounds good in theory, but doesn't work in reality.
Do we need all this theater? It's not the reality.
I see firsthand the powerful effect the Pope's visit had on the country, especially the young.
It's a huge blessing, of course, to see His Holiness here in Lebanon.
I talked to top experts about the role of Hezbollah in the country and how they reacted to the visit of the Pope.
No, let me tell you this. They are not going to change their mind because the Pope visited Lebanon.
And I meet those who are not waiting and taking the future of their country into their own hands.
When you're born a Christian, you're born with a mission. And when you're born a Christian in Lebanon, it's just so obvious to you that you're born with a mission.
This is Christianity in Lebanon. As you've seen in the news recently, the war in the Middle East is putting Lebanon under fire again. And as you'll hear in this documentary, this country has suffered for decades. Political upheaval, war and violence, economic collapse, the port explosion, and yet throughout it all, something has kept the faith of the Lebanese people alive. Something, or someone, is grounding them. On the hilltop of Anaya is the home of someone who lived over 200 years ago. A man, a monk, who wanted to be out of the limelight, who wanted to disappear. But instead, he has become famous for Christians all over the world, Saint Charbel. And when Pope Leo visited Lebanon at the end of November and beginning of December in 2025, he came here to the monastery of Saint Maron, which is where Saint Charbel lived in community before being granted permission to live as a hermit. And today, here at the monastery, I'm meeting Father Louis Matter to learn about the life of this incredible figure.
Saint Charbel was born in 1828 in a village called Bek Akafra. He understood that there is no salvation except through God. He chose to renounce everything, even his own name. His name was Joseph, and he chose the name Charbel, which means the story of God, or God's message.
And Father Louis says he is still interceding for people today, answering the prayers of those who call out to him, which is why this place is so important for the Lebanese people. They feel Saint Charbel has been with them through all of their suffering, not taking it away, but helping them carry it. And that is why each year around 4.5 million pilgrims come here to see his tomb.
He raises the name of Lebanon high, and at the same time makes himself known to people everywhere. He says, "I am always kneeling before God, interceding for all those who suffer. May He intercede for us, and especially for Lebanon.
Christianity in Lebanon dates back to the very first centuries of the faith. The region formed part of the Roman province of Syria, and the Christian message spread here through the preaching of the early apostles and their followers, particularly from nearby Antioch, one of the earliest centers of Christianity. By the 4th century, Christian communities were well established along the Lebanese coast and in the mountains, and over time many believers withdrew into the rugged terrain of Mount Lebanon to escape persecution and political instability. There they developed monastic communities that became centers of worship and education, and it was from these communities emerged the Maronite Church, which would remain in communion with Rome and become the most enduring Christian presence in Lebanon, shaping both the religious and cultural identity of the country. Bishop Michel is the Maronite Catholic bishop who managed the visit of Pope Leo to the country. He's also the president of the Council of Catholic Patriarchs and Bishops of Lebanon.
We must not forget that the Phoenician coast, which is today the Lebanese coast, was evangelized by the apostles. St. Paul tells us in the Acts of the Apostles that he stopped in Tyre and that there was a Christian community there. In Charbel as well, John Mark, who was a disciple of St. Paul, also preached. This means that Christianity reached the Lebanese coast from the time of the apostles, from the very first generation. With time, with the arrival of Islam and the persecutions that Christians were subjected to, they moved more toward the mountains so they could have protection. But Christianity in Lebanon has existed since the earliest centuries, and there has never been a time when Christians were absent from Lebanon.
The Christians went to the mountains because they offered shelter and protection. But it was after 1860 that a form of self-rule was granted to Christians, who went on to help found Lebanon as we know it today.
Without a doubt, at that time, Christians were more numerous. We formed around 60% of the Lebanese population. Today, we have decreased to around 30%.
Today, Lebanon has a population of 5.8 million, of which around 68% are Muslim and around 31 to 34% are Christian. Parliament is equally divided between Muslim and Christians, but more on that later. What is the relationship like here today in Lebanon between the Muslims and the Christians?
Relations have always been good. Why? Because they are based on living together. Christians and Muslims have lived together in fraternal relationships. When Pope John Paul II said that Lebanon is more than a country, that it is a message to the world, he meant that the image Lebanon gives through Christian-Muslim coexistence, dialogue, fraternity, and the relationships they live, away from politics, is the image of Lebanon that we hope reaches the whole world.
The bishop believes that Saint Pope John Paul II was right, that Lebanon is an example to the world. But some Lebanese we spoke to felt it's more of an ideal, an ambition of how it should be, but in reality, it isn't that way. But most were reluctant to express these views on camera for various reasons. One woman we met, however, wasn't, and you'll meet her in a moment. When Pope Leo XIV visited the country, one of his meetings was with Muslim leaders.
Our belief in a God of love and mercy, in an age when coexistence can seem like a distant dream.
They met in Martyrs Square, strategically meeting between St. George Maronite Cathedral and the Muhammad Al-Amin Mosque. Among the local religious leaders gathered to meet the Pope was a well-known judge of Sharia law in Lebanon, Sheikh Khaldoun Ahmed. Imam, how would you describe the relationship between Christians and Muslims living here in Lebanon?
Lebanon is a model of coexistence between Muslims and Christians. The political crisis that Lebanon has endured for more than 40 years was not a crisis of trust between Muslims and Christians. Rather, it was the result of regional conflicts that played out on the Lebanese scene. Lebanon is a small country that is affected by its surroundings because the countries around Lebanon are in conflict.
Sheikh Ariamad argues that coexistence isn't fragile because Christians and Muslims can't live together. It's fragile because Lebanon sits in the path of larger conflicts.
These conflicts are reflected in Lebanon. The wide space of freedom and democracy in Lebanon has been exploited by parties from outside the country. The common ground between Muslims and Christians is far greater than the points of disagreement. This is absolutely true. Muslims cannot be an exact copy of Christians, nor can Christians be an exact copy of Muslims. Muslims and Christians have lived on this land for 1400 years. Islam is a religion of mercy, and Christianity is a religion of love. How beautiful it is when love and mercy come together in the service of humanity.
The words from the judge are beautiful, but in Lebanon, faith isn't something that is confined to churches and mosques. It permeates every aspect of life and society. And that ideal of peaceful coexistence and tolerance starts to be tested when it enters politics.
The Lebanese people are peace-loving and aspire to it. What matters is that Israel must have the conviction to be a state of peace. What is happening between Israelis and Palestinians, the fighting and conflict on Palestinian land, has a direct negative impact on the Lebanese scene. The Pope calls for peace. Islam calls for peace. Christianity calls for peace. The greeting of Muslims is, "Peace be upon you." What is required is peace in the region, but a peace built on truth, justice, and the right of the Palestinian people to their land.
Spending time in Lebanon making this documentary, we met many different types of people from different walks of life, and we heard conflicting messages. While the religious leaders we met were quick to push Lebanon as an ideal, an example to the rest of the Middle East, many of the ordinary, hard-working people we met felt tired. People told us they were tired of the political system and years of corruption and mismanagement that has led to crisis after crisis for Lebanon. Sadly, this has caused many Lebanese to leave their homeland. Around 215,000 people emigrated from here between 2018 and 2021. One of them was Charbel Abu Elias. He owns a pizzeria and restaurant called Charlie's in the town of Bat Mari, just outside of Beirut. He and his wife and children moved to Canada in 2009 after their house was attacked in the south of Lebanon, along the border with Syria. He is now returned with his son to try and rebuild what they can, while his wife and daughters are still in Canada. Charbel grew up in Beirut during the Civil War of 1975, a bloody conflict fought mainly between Christian militias and Muslim-led groups, often aligned with Palestine and later drawing in Syria and Israel, and giving rise to movements like Amal and Hezbollah.
I was a little boy and I saw everything, so I lived it from day one. With my good luck, with my bad luck, I don't know what I want to call it, but...
When you're exposed to it from such a young age, is it something you become used to? Is it something that traumatizes you? Is it a trauma that you become used to?
At that day, it didn't make a difference. It's like I'm watching a movie. But the day after and the week after, it was horrible because both parties, the Christian militia, which is where I used to live, against the Palestinian in the beginning, and they both they get arms so quick, so fast, and it started to be like escalating. The war started to be more aggressive, more bombs, more weapons. And we didn't have to go to school in 1976. As kids, you know, why we can't go to school? Why we have to go to the shelter? Those questions, you know.
Yeah.
And the more you grow older, then you start to be like taking sides in politics, taking sides where you belong, you know, and you start want to be a part of the party that you want to defend. And the older you get, the politics start to get into your personality, and you start hating the other. You know, you start looking at the other as an enemy. You know, and that's something most kids, they experience at that time in the Civil War.
So the identity politics, they hate you because you're the other.
Yes, and we hate them because they were the others.
So you grew up with that hatred?
Yes, I don't know how the other looks like. Never been there.
But I know I hate them.
Yeah, I hate them, but I don't know who they are.
During the Civil War, Beirut was effectively split in two, predominantly Christian East Beirut and then predominantly Muslim West Beirut, divided by the heavily militarized Green Line. The war ended politically with the Taif Agreement in 1989, with most major fighting stopping then in 1990. But in recent years, violence has flared up again along Lebanon's southern border, with Israel and the Iran-backed armed group Hezbollah trading strikes. And like so many others, Charbel's family was once again caught up in the violence.
Unfortunately, the last war, my house got destroyed. Still standing, but the damage so big. It was devastating to see the house like this. It took 3 years to build it. See, the problem up there is sometimes, especially us, the Christian, we are a minority up there. We have no saying about any war taking place, because there are big agenda between a group of people that probably they have a bigger agenda against Israel, and Israel against them, and we don't understand what's going on and who's right and who's wrong. The only thing we know that the Christian always pay the prices.
Because they're the minority.
Because we are a minority. We have no saying. We have then no one takes our opinion if we want a war or not. We just want to live.
Charbel makes the point that even though Lebanon has a sizable Christian population, 31 to 34%, it's spread out so much over the country that there is no stronghold, which means they don't have as much say in politics, in what happens in their towns or villages, in how they live their lives.
Those 4 small towns up there, or 5,
don't have a chance.
We don't have an opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, no one even cares, you know, about what's your opinion, if you want a war or you don't.
Charbel tells me that the biggest problem in Lebanon is that nothing is stable. You know what's happening today, but nobody knows what tomorrow will bring.
The Pope just left yesterday, right?
Yep.
Can you tell me what could happen tomorrow? Can you tell me if some rocket's gonna take off from Lebanon and land it in Israel, or Israel is gonna strike with the F-35 some buildings here? We don't know. But us Christian, we are in the middle. We don't know. We just paying the prices, we're suffering the consequences we have no opinion.
While Lebanon's resident population is around 5 to 6 million, it is said there could be up to 15 million Lebanese living all over the world. And for most, they will probably never come home. Charbel Maron is a Lebanese researcher and human rights activist, and he's the president of the Meshrak Center for Research and Studies. He's been tracking the situation in Lebanon and how it is pushing more people to leave.
So when there is war, they try to go to other places, to the Western world, to get more knowledge, to get a steady life, to get a better life. But up until today, the migration is for everybody, not just for the Christians. After the Beirut explosion, so many Sunnis fled, Shia fled because of as well the Israel-Hezbollah war. So many Shia fled Lebanon. So migration is not just related just to Christians or non-Christians.
It was one thing after another, wasn't
Yes,
it? One
yes.
compounding the next, compounding the next. One
Yes.
tragedy after another for Lebanon.
Yes. So for a guy like me, I'm 40 years old. I've witnessed 4 wars. I've witnessed twice almost a famine. I've witnessed 2 collapses of the financial system, one in the 90s and one in 2020.
So why would you stay? Why not get out of Lebanon?
Because this is our homeland, because this is our roots, because we created this country. We are the unique Catholic entity within a sea of non-Catholics and non-Christians in the region.
How would you say the dynamics are changing for the Christian community today? Is it getting more difficult to be Christian here in Lebanon? Is it becoming easier to be Christian in Lebanon?
Well, as Jesus said, we are in this world and we will always be persecuted. So Christians in the Levant and in Lebanon were and will always be persecuted. But in the guidance of God, we will stay here, we will thrive here.
Dear young people of Lebanon, peace be with you. Assalamu alaikum.
The message of peace was one that Pope Leo repeated continuously while on his visit to Lebanon, and it was a message that rang out across the country. From the moment he arrived, the coverage of his trip was wall-to-wall on national television and trending on social media. Indeed, as he touched down, we had one crew at the airport capturing his arrival, and I was in a coffee shop in the center of Beirut when I noticed 2 young men crouched over a phone across the cafe. I went over and introduced myself, and it turned out they were 2 young Muslim men who were watching the Pope arrive in their country.
Something new, Saraha.
Something new?
Yeah, and for peace,
Great step to Lebanon.
Great for Lebanon.
Yep.
There was a real sense of excitement and joy among young people in Lebanon that Pope Leo was in their country and pushing for peace. But the common feelings among almost everyone we spoke to were ones of distrust, tiredness, and sometimes even contempt for the political system in the country. Professor Roula is a Lebanese academic specializing in religious anthropology and practical theology, and an associate professor at St. Joseph University of Beirut. She currently directs the university's Institute of Islamic Christian Studies, and she is an expert on Christian-Muslim relations in Lebanon and the wider region. Now, before we recorded, you said to me, the politicians here should all go downstairs and they should be burning in hell.
Yes, and I can say it again and again.
You say it half in jest, or why do you say that?
Because if you can see the history of Lebanon, let's say 50 years ago, they are the same. They did the war, they are still the same politician, and they are on the head of all the political parties, and they are the people who has stolen all of our money. They kill people, and they are still killing people. Sure, corruption at all level.
You are a Maronite from Beirut. How does it make you feel as a citizen of this country when you see what your country has been going through again and again and again?
Look, I'm very sad, because after the Beirut blast, I start to get over the idea of Lebanon. It's very different. We've been living in Lebanon, and we wanted to make this country the best of the countries. We are a real citizen. We love this country, and we want the law, and we want the constitution, and we want our army. But unfortunately, I don't think that geopolitically, and the countries, our neighbors, wants that too. So I'm getting over this idea, and it's very sad.
You mean you're giving up on the dream that someday
Yes.
it could be a reality?
Yes, because it's very difficult.
So what do you think will be there instead? If that idea of Lebanon, that message, as Pope John Paul II said, if that's not going to be the reality, what's the alternative?
It's, I have a black view, and I'm very afraid, because either we will gonna be in war, in perpetual war with Hezbollah and Iran and the Syrian system.
Because we've heard a number of times when being here, look at Lebanon, the example in the Middle East.
No.
That's what we hear.
no.
Look, you see...
Not anymore. So I was very, I'm choosing my word because I don't want to say any harmful words. But I was very upset to see that the government and the church were making a makeup of the country.
Professor Talouk mentions she's upset with the church in Lebanon too, for what she refers to as it giving the country an artificial makeover, a facelift to impress the Pope. She feels it's not reflecting reality, and she doesn't hold back.
They put asphalt everywhere where the Pope will pass with his car. And this is not the reality, because we are living here from, let's say, there is places and villages in Lebanon that they don't have good infrastructure since 40 years ago. And now, because the Pope is coming, we have to put asphalt. I'm afraid to tell it, but we know that the church has asked for $15 million to make all these celebrations. In a country that is suffering, is that acceptable? Our system is corrupted, our government is corrupted, and unfortunately, our church is corrupted.
The total cost for the Pope's visit to Lebanon is reported to be around $15 million, 10 of which came from the state and 5 from private donations. Pope Benedict's visit to Lebanon in 2012 cost $5 million. And you know, to play devil's advocate, Professor, they might say, well, look, putting in that infrastructure, for the crowds, the 15,000 young people, the staging, the lighting, the portable toilets, the buses to and from, the security to secure the Pope, the closing of the roads, the escorts, the televising of it, the catering, it all adds up and comes to 15 million.
Do we need all this? Do we need all this theater? It's not the reality. It's not the reality.
Even when Lebanon shows signs of stabilizing, violence has flared up again along the southern border, where Israel and the Iran-backed armed group Hezbollah have repeatedly traded strikes. Hezbollah is designated a terrorist organization by the United States. But here in Lebanon, views are divided. Some see it as a resistance movement and a political force, supporting it even, while others say its weapons and its actions constantly keep the country on a knife's edge. What's the current situation in Lebanon in terms of Hezbollah, its strength, its position in the country, its support among the public?
Hezbollah has stopped the presidential elections for 2 years. Hezbollah has killed all the good politicians from all the confessions, not only Christian. Hezbollah has put his arms on all the governments since 2005 and all the ministries. Hezbollah has the hand on the Lebanese army.
Speaking this openly and being so forthright about your beliefs, calling it as you see it, corruption and so on, is it safe for you to talk this openly in Lebanon?
No, it's not safe. But I have my faith and I have my strength. And I have my people.
As we mentioned at the beginning of the program, faith here is something so strong and important to people. When they say they are Christian, they really mean it. And we keep hearing incredible stories of those who have suffered a great deal, but feel they have been sustained by their belief in God. In 2020, the country was in the middle of the pandemic when disaster struck.
Oh my God!
On the 4th of August 2020, a catastrophic explosion ripped through the port of Beirut when a fire ignited a stockpile of about 2,750 tons of ammonium nitrate that had been stored in a warehouse for years, unleashing one of the largest non-nuclear blasts in modern history. The shockwave devastated large parts of the capital, killing around 218 people, injuring 7,000 and displacing roughly 300,000 people. It also caused billions of dollars in damage. And this was one of Pope Leo's stops in Lebanon, where he prayed in silence on the site of the explosion. Surrounding him were family members of the deceased who held pictures of their loved ones. The Pope met with them, one by one, some embracing him, overwhelmed by the moment. And one of those who was standing there was William Noon. His brother Joseph Noon was one of the first firefighters to respond when the fire originally broke out. He was trying to open this container to fight the flames when the enormous blast happened, killing him instantly.
He was older than me by 1 year and 2 months. We lived a simple, modest life. We were building our future together. He was physically very strong and took part in strength sports. In Lebanon, there are competitions where people pull trucks, play tug of war, or lift stone weights of around 50 kilograms. He was known for excelling in them. His goal in life was simple: to build a stable future in a very difficult country and to get married. Most of his time, if he wasn't with family, he was with the church and with the youth.
William has such warm memories of his brother Joseph, and he remembers what that day was like. The day of the explosion, what do you remember about that day and where you and your brother were?
The day was normal. There had been protests in Lebanon. People were burning tires and demonstrating against the government at the time. He went back to the fire station, to the dormitory area. He loved food very much. He was cooking food and eating with his colleagues. Then the alarm rang and they went down to the port. At the port in Lebanon, there is a separate firefighter department from the one they belonged to. But that unit was not present, so they were forced to respond from their station. The last phone call I had with him was around 1:30 in the afternoon. He went down with his colleagues. From the video we saw the day after the explosion, they arrived at the site with a fire truck and an ambulance. Inside the warehouse, sounds began to be heard, something like popping noises. We thought it was gunfire. The sounds increased, and the glass inside the warehouse began to shatter. Everyone imagined that they would leave and run away, but that is not what happened. They made the decision to open the warehouse door and try to extinguish the fire. There was no responsible authority present. There should have been someone from the army or the police to inform them about what was inside the warehouse, that there was ammonium nitrate. They thought it was a normal fire, like the ones they usually respond to. The last image I have of Joe, and I consider it an image of pride, is him trying, with his friends, to open the warehouse door to save the city from disaster, without knowing that a massive explosion was about to happen.
As Joseph and his firefighting colleagues were trying to open the container to put out the fire, they were completely unaware of how dangerous the situation was. And with that, the tons of ammonium nitrate caught fire and exploded.
That first night, I went down to the port to search for where he and his colleagues had been. I began seeing his friends, people I knew. Every time they saw me, they would walk away. They could not give me an answer. I saw senior officers among his friends, men in their 40s and 50s, the ones responsible for them, sitting on the ground, crying. Everything had disintegrated. Nothing was intact. Bodies were not found whole. They were found in fragments. After 8 days, they were able to identify my brother's body through DNA.
Today, William has become one of the leading voices calling for justice for the victims and their families. They believe the authorities should have alerted them to what was being stored in the port at that time. And there are many other questions around why that dangerous ammonium nitrate was there in the first place. A disaster waiting to happen.
There is no peace without justice.
Pope Leo visited the site and he prayed in silence. You were there with your wife and your child. What was that moment like with Pope Leo?
Before the Pope arrived, all the families were shocked by the scene. I'd spent 12 days down there. They were hell. All the images came back into our minds. Then the Pope appeared, wearing white. You could feel a breath of peace in the middle of a place filled with darkness. For us, Pope Leo prayed in silence. But through that silence, he also delivered a message to all those responsible in Lebanon and outside Lebanon. For us, the Pope's visit to the port must be taken in a practical sense. It is a message to all those responsible around the world that this crime, the largest non-nuclear explosion in the world, must reach justice. We must know what happened on that day.
The more you spend time with the people here, the more you realize that pain and suffering seem to be part of what it means to live here. It isn't easy, and it's something that they've come to expect.
كلك جميلة وليس فيك عيب هلمي معي حتى رنم.
God has blessed me with the gift of my voice. So I use this gift, which I consider a talent, to sing hymns to God. Every day, through hymns, I sing to God. I thank him, glorify him, and praise him. Through this, I am able to live a beautiful spiritual life.
I've come to the Christian city of Zahle, around an hour and a half from Beirut. It's a scenic city in the heart of the Bekaa Valley and is a place famous for poetry and literature in Lebanon, and is also home to the towering Our Lady of Zahle and Bekaa statue overlooking the valley. And I've come here to meet local singer and Christian Rima Turk. I wanted to find out from Rima how people here keep their faith in the face of such suffering. What is it like living life as a Christian in Lebanon today?
Christian life in Lebanon is very beautiful and very difficult. It is very beautiful because there are many believers. But we face many challenges, because there are many divisions between sects. In Lebanon, people do not look at one another as human beings. They look at this one as Christian, that one as non-Christian. And this causes many problems. After passing through 50 years of war in Lebanon and the harsh days we lived and experienced taught us to rise above material things. They taught us to look more toward spiritual things, to look toward God's peace, to ask God for peace and to grow closer to Him. You must ask God to help you. You must pray, and pray every day, so that you can reach peace, or reconciliation with yourself, with others, and with God, in order to live this life in peace in Lebanon.
It was interesting to hear Rima say that, as they cannot put their faith in anything material, it has to be put in God. But also, as she said, it's not an easy thing to do. In Lebanon, it can be easy to despair and lose hope, especially for young people. With lack of jobs and opportunities, many give up and fill the void with alcohol and drugs. Rima is one of the founders of Nasroto Association. Established 20 years ago, it is a rehabilitation center for those suffering from addiction.
We face many challenges with people struggling with addiction. There is a significant increase in the number of addicts in Lebanon. For an addicted person to be able to recover, they must be convinced that they truly want to be healed. If the person is convinced, and we help them, especially on the spiritual level, they can certainly recover, move forward, and live a normal life.
Apart from the other crises we've already mentioned, Rima points to the financial crash of 2019 as a cause of major psychological hardship on the people. Lebanese banks froze people's funds to prevent the country's financial system from completely collapsing. And even today, people are still waiting to get access to their life savings. A total of $93 billion is still frozen. I have the opportunity to walk around the centre and talk to some of the residents, young men who want to have a better future, but right now cannot see how it is possible. And the centre also cares for children who have been orphaned, their parents killed in one of the country's many wars.
For the people who are with us at the center, we do everything we can, from our hearts, to serve them with love, with strength, and with deep compassion. Our duty is to restore them to a dignified life.
With so much conflict in the country and in the government itself, various groups fighting for control, it means working together towards the common good of the people rarely happens. When things go wrong, like the Beirut explosion, various parties play the blame game, with the ordinary people the ones who suffer. Today I'm travelling outside the capital to a rural location in the hilltops. It's an affluent area with mansions hidden among the trees. There I'm meeting businessman, lobbyist and geopolitical consultant Tony Nissi. He's a player on the world stage, advocating always for Lebanon, and he is the president of the Committee for UN Security Council Resolutions for Lebanon. Tony, I've heard the political landscape in Lebanon described as a mosaic, with a lot of different pieces all coming together for the overall picture. Is that accurate?
Yes. You know what? Lebanon is a multicultural country. And unfortunately, when it was united under one independence, they made a compromise. If you look at the whole of the Middle East, it's dominated by the Muslims. And actually most of the Middle East, or all the Middle East, unless Lebanon, they are Muslim countries, where there is some Christians living in it. Lebanon is different. Lebanon is supposed to be a Christian-dominated country where the Muslims are living in it. So it's the opposite, you know. But by the time, unfortunately, it seems the Muslims, they were deciding all the time to get the power. That's why we've been through many wars inside Lebanon since the independence. Every 10 years we have a war. We ended up in 1990 to have a compromise, a new compromise, where Lebanon became an Arabic country, you know. So in 1943, they said, okay, we don't want Lebanon to be an Arabic country because there is the Arabs and the non-Arabs, which are the Aramaic Christians. So we're gonna have a country with an Arabic face, you know, where the first language is the Arabic, the second language is French.
Because was that the compromise, Tony?
It's a compromise, yes.
Arabic face, but underneath that face,
yes,
you had that mosaic.
Yes, so it's a compromise. It used to be a compromise, which they thought, everybody think that right now we're living in peace with a unique country which has a face different than the Arabic countries. It's an Arab face, but not an Arabic country, you know, where the Christians and the Muslims, they can live in harmony and they can live together. But by the time we reached in 1990 a new compromise, unfortunately the Christians lost the war and the Arabs, they won the war. So we became an Arabic country by force.
With the increasing Arab influence in the country, it gave power and rise to Hezbollah, who are backed by the Islamic State of Iran.
And now Hezbollah, he wants to be pro-Iran, he wants to be following Iran. And in his ideology, in his main ideology, he wants to transform Lebanon into an Iranian revolution.
An Islamic state?
An Islamic state, an Islamic state, the same way as Iran is right now.
Hezbollah released a statement on the arrival of Pope Leo, saying, "What the Israeli enemy did in Gaza against the Palestinian people is a clear act of genocide. What Israel is doing in Lebanon is a blatant and unacceptable aggression that we condemn. We in Hezbollah take this opportunity of your auspicious visit to our country, Lebanon, to reaffirm our commitment to coexistence, to consensual democracy, to maintaining internal security and stability, and to safeguarding national sovereignty by standing with our army and our people to confront any aggression or occupation of our land and country."
The statement says that we want to live in peace in Lebanon, and for us, living in peace means defending the enemy Israel, you know, and living in peace, it means keeping our weapons to defend all Lebanon. So actually they are trying to find a way and to tell the Pope that you need to support our ideas and our ideologies because we are protecting everybody in front of the enemy.
They're saying we're here for all Lebanese, Muslims and Christians.
Yes, this is what they are saying. But honestly, what we've seen the last 20 years, they were using their weapons inside Lebanon, ruling by themselves 30% of the country, and they are ruling by proxy the other 2/3 of the country.
And how are they allowed to have that control and power? Is it because the Lebanese government think, well, their army is stronger than ours, they're better armed than us, we'll have another civil war in our hands here if we try and tackle this, so we just let it be?
No, I think that right now, our president and the government, they believe that there's a balance of power between Hezbollah and the army. Maybe the army is not stronger than Hezbollah and the opposite. I believe they are thinking, but their main problem is, as they are saying, there's lots of Shias in the Lebanese army. And they are afraid that the army is gonna split if they try to attack Hezbollah. So the split is not good for the army, first. Second, they believe, and I'm not sure if this is true, yes or no, because actually we don't have statistics, that Hezbollah represents really 90% of the Shias. So whenever you have 90% of the Shias, it means you have like almost 25% of the country with you, which means if we touch Hezbollah,
they will have public support.
He is going to have public support, which means a civil war, you know.
Whether you agree with Tony or not, his fear is shared by many Lebanese that the state is too weak and armed forces too powerful for politics alone to rescue the country.
The Arabs are trying to erase everything related to Christianity, to the identity of the Christians of Lebanon.
Do you think his visit will have an impact long term? Because that message of peace, so powerful, and Christians living here in Lebanon, of course, you could see many were moved to tears. The people living in those other regions along the south, those people who are supporting Hezbollah, a visit like that and words like that from the Pope, does it mean anything?
No, let me tell you this. They are not going to change their mind because the Pope visited Lebanon. But I believe that the Pope, as his political position, not as his religious position, he can do a lot for Lebanon. And he asked the youth to start preparing themselves to lead the country, and this was a political message as well.
He said the future of the country is taking shape in your hands as we speak.
Yes, so I've seen, if you look at the visit as itself, the Pope did not give the power to the current political leaders. He did not even meet with them. He did not discuss Lebanese politics with them.
He gave it to the youth.
Of course, and this is very important. This is actually what we needed from the Pope, and he did exactly what the people wanted.
You said that the Pope won't change the minds of many of those people. Would he be able to change the hearts of those people?
Yes, the heart is something different.
The Pope's visit's gonna bring peace in Lebanon.
He's coming to help us.
Gives me more hope towards a better future.
And for so many, this is the pinnacle of Pope Leo's visit to Lebanon. Thousands of young people from across the country crammed in to see the Holy Father, united by their faith and their desire for peace.
Dear young people, perhaps you regret inheriting a world torn apart by wars and disfigured by social injustice. Yet there is hope, and there is hope within you. You are the present, and the future is already taking shape in your hands. You have the enthusiasm to change the course of history.
On the Pope's final day in Lebanon, he celebrated Mass at Beirut's waterfront with around 150,000 people. And in his homily, he urged the people to work towards the kind of country the people so long for.
Lebanon, stand up. Be a home of justice and fraternity. Everyone must do their part, and we must unite our efforts so that this land can return to its former glory.
In the crowd was journalist Amal, and for her, this moment was extra special. Completely blind, she has dedicated her career to covering stories of Christianity, faith, and hope for the Lebanese people.
From a very young age, starting in my school years and childhood, I developed a deep passion for writing. I began writing when I was still very young, and over time this talent grew stronger. I eventually started writing books, and this hobby took up a significant part of my life. It brings me great joy, and today my happiness is even greater because I am working in translation as well. This gift that I possess is a blessing from God, especially in the field of journalism, because I truly love writing.
But it was in her teenage years that she was diagnosed with a retinal disorder, which over the next number of years caused her to slowly lose her eyesight, something she really struggled with.
When I first faced this reality, I found it extremely difficult to accept. At the beginning, I rejected what I felt God had imposed on me. I said that He accepted crucifixion by His own will, but I did not want to be crucified before this great challenge.
With her vision fading day by day, Amal was despairing. And two of the last things that she remembers seeing before completely losing her eyesight was her mother crying and the image of Jesus on the cross.
Later, during the day, I saw my mother crying because of me, and her tears deeply affected me. I had an image of Jesus on the cross in my room. I looked at it directly and said, "Lord, look at my mother, how afraid she is for me. You gave me this cross, and I do not want to carry it. What do you want from me?"
For Amal, this was a turning point in her life.
This is my faith, because if Jesus were not present in my life today, it would be impossible for me to accept this pain that I carry, this cross, and this darkness. Together, we bear witness that true darkness is the darkness of the heart, not the darkness of the eyes. Today, I say to the Lord, thank you for strengthening me to carry this cross and for giving me the opportunity to share in your suffering.
While as night sets over Beirut, I make my way to the city centre again to visit a new coffee shop. Despite the economic hardship, young people who have decided to stay in Lebanon are doing what they can to try and push their country forward. Here I'm meeting a group of young Christians. Some have been living abroad for years but have recently decided to move home to support their country. And we sit down for a coffee to talk about the impact the Pope's visit had on them.
We felt his love for the country and how he wanted to provide for this country, how he cared for this country. It meant so much to each and every one of us. And I felt like what Pope Leo did, it gave hope for this country.
Celine Shaheen is 30 years of age. She was born in Lebanon but grew up in the United States and has now just returned to live here. Her parents stayed back in the US and tried to convince her not to go.
The faith that we have here is so incredible and so lived out in the culture, and it's like a wrap of God's embrace here in this country.
The twin brothers, Charbel and Giovanni Al-Taif, are so passionate about their faith and supporting it here in Lebanon that a few years ago they started an online platform called Eastern Christians, uploading short-form content explaining aspects of the faith to a young generation, highlighting the Christian history of the land, and covering day-to-day events in the church. And on TikTok and Instagram, they have amounted hundreds of thousands of followers.
When you're born a Christian, you're born with a mission. And when you're born a Christian in Lebanon, it's just so obvious to you that you're born with a mission. Maybe if you're born outside of Lebanon, it takes you some time to realize that. And it's really awesome when you're walking through the valleys that's been inhabited by the Christians from day one. Those same Christians that heard Jesus preach themselves. How awesome is that? And some of them even paid blood to be here, to stay here in those lands.
For us here, our Christianity is it's almost everything for us. It's our identity, you know. It's our culture. It's our heritage. The moment you're born into this land, it's like you're born in a beautiful community, and a community that we all share the same stuff. Like we're this one big family in Lebanon. I was just telling my friend we had 100 million views in 3 days, only just showing the world how Lebanon welcomed Pope Leo. And for me, I sat and I reflected on that, and I felt very emotional because I was praying to God 2 years ago just for him to give me power so I can make a change in my country, to keep this heritage, to keep the church that my ancestors fought for living, and to make a change. And now, by the power of the Holy Spirit, thank God, we're able to do that.
As I ascend the steps of the hill Anaya overlooking the city of Beirut, I visit the small home where Saint Charbel once lived as a hermit. It was in this simple room he spent years in prayer and contemplation. Lebanon's Christians do not pretend suffering isn't real. They know what war destroys. They know what corruption steals. They know what grief can do to generations. But they also know the power of faith, the power of believing in something greater than themselves, and the power that has to carry them no matter what.